Later, Ma woke up upon hearing her phone chime with a new message. She glanced at the screen and saw that she had received $245,400 covering all fees and 5 months rental from Zhuang Wu. Following that was Wu's message, informing her that he had settled all the outstanding bills and asking if she could look after Meng for a few days in his absence. Ma retorted, accusing Wu of lying, arguing that a typical fever and flu did not necessitate a VIP sick room. Meanwhile, in the Great Rift Valley, Wu trudged on, aware that despite being near a city skyline with trees, he couldn't drive a car to his destination. Within the territory, he still had a 30-kilometer journey ahead, but being a demon had significantly enhanced his physique, making the long walk seem trivial. Glancing at his map, he realized he was close to Darren's village. If his memory served him right, according to his prior game design, the burial ground should be concealed in the deepest part of the mist fog forests. Before the dungeon was opened, finding it required a mission map guiding him to the location. He also knew he could obtain this mission at Darren's village. A neutral site, this village hosted a significant number of high-ranking players and served as a critical resource supply station in the western defense area. Within the village, a man asked if anyone could hear him, asserting that those wanting the mission should present him with an attractive girl for company. One of the men, angered, unsheathed his sword, but his friends, calling him Xiao Hao, urged him to calm down. They explained that attacking an NPC could lead to blacklisting, a wanted poster, and pursuit by players' associations. Hao, frustrated, complained about the man. This drunken scoundrel had been swindling them for food and drinks daily, and he had depleted half a year's worth of his savings without the man providing any equipment in return. Suddenly, Wu appeared, exclaiming his relief at having found him. As Wu approached the man, Hao intervened, warning him about the man's deceitful tactics. The man suggested to Wu that if he desired a good mission, he should bring him attractive women for company. Wu opened his inventory while Hao continued to caution him about trusting the man. Wu thrust a risque magazine in the man's face, causing surprise and curiosity. Wu then unveiled a stack of similar magazines, questioning their appeal. The man hastily snatched them from Wu, but stated that good missions weren't distributed so freely. He was thirsty and wanted Wu to bring him some wine. Wu promptly produced a 53% Maodai liquor, assuring the man it was no issue. Hao watched in disbelief, aware that the Fly to the Sky wine Wu displayed was valued at $5,000, and he was using it merely to secure a mission. The man greedily grabbed the bottle and drank instantly. Pleased, he commented on the quality of the wine, noting Wu's sincerity, but still demanding a love letter to his neighbor Juliet before he would consider offering the mission. Struggling to control his anger, Wu set about writing the love letter. Hao, reading over Wu's shoulder, was impressed with Wu's eloquent and sweet words. However, upon delivering the letter, Wu was greeted with a punch to the face from an enraged butcher, threatening to maim them if they continued to harass his wife on behalf of the drunken man. Wu found himself infuriated, wondering who could have designed such a ludicrous mission. The drunken man, pleased with Wu's efforts, offered him a mission. An interface popped up before Wu, showing that his task was to retrieve the remains of the drunkard Ka Lin's son, Ka Shanda. The young man had gone adventuring and had never returned. It was rumored he had perished in the burial area, and Ka Lin was hoping Wu could bring his son's remains back. Wu accepted the mission, and Ka Lin presented him with a map to the burial area and a bell to use in a crisis, as the area was fraught with danger. The map marked the location of the burial area and a bloodthirsty demon tree, while the bell, named the Undead Bell, was B rank and capable of dispelling undead. It was created by Ka Lin in hopes of bringing his son's remains back home, and, upon use, it would deal a significant amount of damage to undead and death spirits and impose a silence effect lasting 10 seconds. The other players eagerly asked Wu if Ka Lin had given him a piece of equipment and if he was willing to share the mission. One player, a level 47 archer, suggested they join forces to complete the mission. Wu thanked them but insisted he could handle the mission solo and advised them to continue their activities. As he exited the house, he failed to notice several people watching him from above. One of them instructed his team that once Wu left the village, the mission and equipment would be theirs. Later, Wu dashed away on his mission, pursued by robed individuals. A child pointed at Wu and informed her uncle that Wu was the recipient of the historic rank mission. She then proceeded to tail Wu, suggesting to her uncle that they should keep watch to discern the nature of Wu's assignment. However, one of the robed men menacingly licked his blade, remarking that the girl was rather fetching, prompting her to query about their intentions. The child's uncle, Chen, promptly gripped her shoulder, explaining to the man that she was immature and imploring him not to take offense. Meanwhile, the girl protested to her uncle that the men were malicious. In response, Chen scolded her, stating that children should not interrupt adult conversations. One of the robed figures suggested they depart to avoid losing sight of Wu, and so the group departed. Chen advised his niece to steer clear of these individuals in the future, to which she inquired why he maintained a respectful demeanor despite his superior level. In response, Chen noted the difficulty of warding off poisonous snakes and elaborated that her limited time in the Great Rift Valley meant she was not privy to all its rules. The valley, he explained, is far from any city, replete with malice and peril, such as criminal activity. It boasted the highest crime rate, and it was not uncommon for inhabitants to meet their end at the hands of these metaphorical poisonous snakes rather than actual monsters. When the girl questioned why the association failed to deal with these villains, Chen revealed that in their underground world, occasional deaths were the norm and surveillance measures like CCTV cameras were ineffective, if not impossible, to establish. How would they monitor or investigate? He queried. The girl, intimidated, acknowledged that this meant anyone targeted by these poisonous snakes was at risk. Chen agreed, cautioning her that those naive or greedy enough to undertake such missions alone usually met a grim fate. He recommended seeking the protection of a strong guild. Later, Wu arrived at the entrance of the mist fog forest. He glanced back, questioning if his pursuers were these metaphorical poisonous snakes, and pondered if they were plotting an attack once he ventured into the woods. Despite the forest's daunting fog barrier obscuring visibility, he proceeded inward. A man loaded an arrow into his bow, releasing it towards Wu, who narrowly evaded the projectile. He promptly sought cover behind a tree, anticipating the approach of the attackers. He observed 4 figures. One of the men teased the archer about his poor aim, prompting him to activate his snake cane, assuring his companion he would reduce Wu to dust. A fire snake materialized from the cane, hurtling towards Wu and demolishing the tree in its wake. Wu narrowly escaped, pondering how they had discovered his hiding spot. As Wu fled, the archer mocked the cane wielder for also missing his target, asserting that he had no grounds to criticize his archery skills. While Wu was running, Wu abruptly halted, sensing impending danger due to his demon's instincts. Activating his demon's eye, he spotted a man above, ready to strike. The assailant lunged, only to be met with Wu's sword. As they struggled, the attacker surmised that Wu must be an assassin, given his ability to detect stealth. A man named Zhang ordered the group to continue their onslaught and prevent Wu's escape. The archer then sent a volley of arrows skyward. Wu retreated from his adversary, sensing a new threat. He looked up to see the incoming barrage and, with swift precision, deflected the nearest projectiles. He understood their strategy: long-range attacks to halt his movement, stealthy ambushes, and widespread damage. However, he was struck by a couple of arrows, losing 20 and 23 HP respectively. He fled, consulting his map and recognizing the well-coordinated tactics of his foes, indicative of their long-term partnership. Yet, he couldn't help but smile confidently. His run was brought to a halt by a large tree blocking his path. One man taunted Wu, remarking on his halted escape. Wu retorted that if they hadn't pursued him, there would be no need for escape. The archer, incensed, aimed an arrow at Wu, declaring his impending demise. However, Wu calmly dodged the attack, causing the arrow to strike the tree. Unexpectedly, the tree stirred, its roots writhing. It was the wild boss, the bloodthirsty demon tree, roused by the arrow's impact. The guardian of the mist fog forest was level 42, B rank, with special skills in puncture and bloodthirst. As the roots ascended, the archer's bravado melted into terror. He turned to their leader, Zhang, pleading for rescue as the boss seemed to have locked onto him. The archerman shouted in panic as the threat approached him. One of the men asked Zhang how they could possibly defeat it, given that it was at level 42. Zhang responded, noting they seemed to have fallen into Wu's trap. As the enemy was about to attack the archerman, the man implored Zhang to rescue him swiftly. The cane-wielding man activated his snake cane, but inadvertently hit the archerman instead. Injured by the boss, the man queried his companions about their treacherous actions. They explained that the boss's aggression had been drawn by him. Thus, after his demise, the boss's attention would be redirected to the closest person. The man was consumed by the boss, morphing into a skeletal form in an instant. Meanwhile, his companion reassured him that this was the intended strategy. They wouldn't have to confront the boss directly. Subsequently, the venomous snakes attempted to flee while Wu observed them. Wu anticipated that those snakes would turn against their own kind when their lives were in danger. As they ran off, one of the men pointed out something strange to Zhang. The cane-wielding man explained that the boss's attention didn't shift to the kid, but instead focused on him. The boss's roots ruptured the ground in pursuit of them. Subsequently, the roots emerged and encircled the group. Launching an attack, the roots targeted the cane-wielding man. In a state of panic, he begged Zhang to devise a quick solution to save him. Just as the cane-wielding man was about to be attacked, the assassin activated his stealth ability and mockingly informed the cane wielder of his departure. However, the roots turned and impaled the assassin instead, absorbing his blood and reducing him to a skeletal form. With shaky attempts to stand, the cane-wielding man proclaimed their impending doom. Zhang observed that the boss didn't target Xiao Wu or the cane-wielding man initially, but instead attacked Xiao Jiang, the escaping assassin. This led Zhang to deduce that the boss's attack patterns weren't necessarily linked to aggression. He theorized that the boss might be using waves to sense its targets, suggesting that if they remain still, they won't be attacked by the bosses. Zhang also noticed that Wu hadn't been attacked by the boss, speculating that this was because Wu hadn't moved at all. He surmised that Wu must have understood the boss's attack style and settings. Xiao's panicked cries brought Zhang back to the present. As Xiao ran away, the Root pursued him, primed to strike from behind. Zhang warned Xiao that if he ceased movement, the boss wouldn't attack him. Upon hearing this, Xiao stopped running, and the Root also halted. Zhang directed Xiao to employ his flame snake against Wu, who was positioned at the center of the boss. Xiao activated his cane snake while shouting a death wish towards Wu. However, Wu deftly dodged behind a tree. Seeing this, Xiao, in a panic, pointed his fire upward, knowing he couldn't risk hitting the boss. Xiao's attack exploded mid-air, and he queried Zhang on why the boss didn't attack Wu despite his movements. However, Zhang confessed that he was unsure. Wu realized that in a brief span of time, they had understood the bloodthirsty demon tree's attack style and settings. Furthermore, he acknowledged the venomous snake's strength and cunning. If they targeted their prey, escape would be impossible. However, Wu knew that hesitation had no place when facing venomous snakes. He then reached into his inventory and drew his bow and arrow, aiming them at Xiao. As Xiao activated his burst fireball to counter the incoming arrows, Zhang warned him that Wu was baiting his attack. His fireball struck the boss, sending Xiao into a shock and panic. Swiftly, the Roots impaled Xiao. Wu took aim once again, this time targeting Zhang. Zhang deflected the arrows with his sword, shifting into berserker mode while challenging Wu's arrogance. Determinedly, Zhang charged towards Wu, promising to demonstrate the chasm between their abilities. Zhang knew that the boss might have an area it didn't attack, otherwise, he couldn't explain why the boss didn't attack Wu. Zhang severed the Roots, warning Wu not to assume safety simply because he hid behind the boss. Wu relaxed. Zhang, that bastard, is so powerful, he thought, witnessing Zhang fighting toe-to-toe against the boss. Wu knew that a berserker could enter berserk mode, an effect lasting for 5 minutes, granting the player an additional buff of all attributes increased by 50%. Zhang, breaking the ground beneath him, leaped towards Wu, shouting threats of impending doom. Wu was aware that the bloodthirsty demon tree might be a wild boss, but it was far from weak, proving stronger than some C-rank dungeon bosses. Wu then wondered where Zhang's confidence to kill him came from while facing such a formidable boss. Suddenly, he realized it must be an artifact. Zhang was holding an artifact named Flame Dragon's Roar. It was a D-level artifact. Its effect stated that the Flame Dragon's Roar, unsealed from a crystal ball, dealt large-scale area damage and had explosive power. Zhang lifted the Flame Dragon's Roar into the air, shouting for Wu to meet his end. It made Wu realize that Zhang was recklessly daring because he was holding a dangerous artifact. Then, Zhang released the Flame Dragon's Roar, causing a large explosion. Meanwhile, in Darren's village, the locals saw the large explosion emanating from the Mist Fog Forest. They knew that it was at least a C-rank artifact that could be bought for a few $1,000,000. At the entrance to the Mist Fog Forest, Chen and a child were covering their faces to avoid the fallout from the explosion. The child asked his uncle if the person would die. She tried to run to check on him, but Chen grabbed her hand, asserting that they could only go so far. Chen led her away, warning that it was too dangerous ahead, and if they ventured any further, they would get caught up in the blast. On the other hand, the bloodthirsty demon tree was ablaze, and Zhang lay on the ground. Wu took a sip of water, commenting that if he hadn't run quickly, he would have perished there. He knew that the power of the artifact was far more terrifying than the boss was, and that luckily, Zhang, like a poisonous snake, chose to leave his companions to die rather than using the artifact from the start, which would have put him in danger. He approached Zhang and noted that the poison snake was rather wealthy, seeing the multitude of magic crystals Zhang had. Suddenly, Zhang's hand moved, and he attacked immediately. Fortunately, Wu jumped back in time to avoid it. Zhang questioned how he'd been discovered, but Wu retorted, teasingly asking if Zhang thought he was stupid. He explained that when a player dies, their dropped items are neatly arranged, not scattered haphazardly. He accused Zhang of throwing his items out as bait, thinking Wu would be blinded by greed, and then planning to attack him while he was distracted by the items. Zhang laughed, commending Wu for being perceptive, even suggesting that Wu was more of a poison snake than them. However, Wu knew that he was the game designer. When asked how he survived the explosion, Zhang revealed that he was on the verge of death, so there was no harm in sharing. He explained that he had a unique piece of equipment that allowed him to use 2 artifacts simultaneously, the Flame Dragon Roar and the Flame Dragon Protection. The latter cost more than $1 billion, intended for use against the goddess martial artist, but unexpectedly, it was wasted on Wu. Then Zhang questioned why the boss hadn't attacked Wu, as he couldn't understand. Wu drew his sword, responding that the boss didn't attack him because they were the same, both from the demon race. Zhang laughed heartily, thinking it was a joke, and told Wu to stop lying. But then Zhang's expression shifted, and he told Wu that it was easier to find answers from his corpse. Wu smirked and activated his hunt mark. The hunt mark showed him where he could critically strike Zhang, revealing that Zhang was barely holding on and had sustained grave damage from the earlier explosion. Zhang wondered what was happening, why he felt like a target, and if the kid was stronger than him. However, he dismissed the notion, thinking it impossible because Wu wasn't even level 20. Wu began his transformation, leaped towards Zhang, and attacked him in demon form, wanting to end it swiftly. Zhang was taken aback, but Wu slashed at him with his sword. Zhang questioned who Wu was. He then fell to his knees, admitting that he recognized Wu was the same as the goddess martial artist, both no longer human. With one last look at Wu, Zhang called him a demon. A notification popped up indicating that he had eliminated a high-level player, earning him 19,000 experience points, raising him to level 17. Furthermore, he completed the hunting mission, which awarded him 1 hunt value point, leaving his hunt value point level at 1, with 1 out of 100. Killing a player had awarded him so much experience, leading him to wonder why he hadn't heard this from other players. Could it be because he was a demon? He also noticed that the hunt mark skill seemed upgradable, prompting him to ponder whether dark elves would also level up if they killed players. He opened his inventory, knowing that those 4 individuals had dropped numerous items, and then he spotted a sword. As he grasped it, it vibrated continuously. Its name was Vibrator Metal Long Sword with an attack power of 6575. Being a B-rank weapon, its special feature was vibration. This long sword was crafted from vibrating rock. When equipped, the weapon vibrated intensely, increasing its destructive power, making it easier to deal higher damage to monsters and destroy enemies' weapons and equipment. However, its use was restricted to players at level 35 or above. He pondered that only characters with berserker or similar professions could use it effectively. Then, he picked up Wu Tu's transformation ring. This was a rank item with a special feature that allowed the player to equip 2 artifacts simultaneously. This miniature ring was the life's masterpiece of Wu Tu, the elves race's genius artifact researcher. Wu knew it only dropped in B rank or higher dungeons, and currently, only some big guilds could clear such dungeons. He wondered how Zhang had obtained such a precious item. Later, people started moving towards the site of the explosion. The Green Goat Guild's 9th Attack Force squad arrived, and their leader informed them that the people had been attacked by a wild boss. One of the team members reported that they had found 4 players' corpses, but the leader was shocked to see Zhang lying on the ground. He asked, "Why him?" The man asked if the leader knew Zhang, to which he replied, "He is Zhang, his little brother." One of the team members had heard the guild leader's younger brother disliked participating in dungeon raids but had become a poison snake. He took advantage of the guild leader's identity, and the association's members could do nothing about it. The guild leader had given Zhang several rare pieces of equipment, so it was inconceivable that Zhang couldn't defeat some wild boss. One of the men reported that all items from their inventory had been looted. The leader recognized that those 3 corpses were indeed slain by a wild boss, but Zhang's chest wound seemed to have been inflicted by a sharp weapon. He instructed his team to notify the guild's members and begin searching for any suspicious individuals nearby. Meanwhile, Wu arrived at the burial dungeon. It was a C-rank difficulty challenge open to a single contender. He pushed the gate open and stepped into the first floor, named the Corpse's Corridor. Suddenly, a voice called him an invader and warned him he would pay a hefty price for his rash actions. Skeletons along the corridor animated and formed a level 27 skeleton warrior, a level 26 skeleton spearman, and a level 28 skeleton archer. Wu knew this differed from his original design, as the first floor shouldn't have contained such high-level skeletons. He realized that the system had tampered with his game data and codes again. As the warrior skeleton lifted its weapon to attack, Wu blocked it with his sword. Still, his foot cracked the ground due to the warrior's force, and he struggled to keep his balance, wondering why a mere skeleton could possess such strength. While he was occupied with the warrior skeleton, the spearman skeleton lunged at him from the side. Wu spotted it just in time and jumped midair to evade the strike. The archer skeleton took aim while he was airborne. Understanding that fighting in such a confined space was to his disadvantage, Wu noticed the archer skeleton release an arrow towards him. Luckily, he managed to block it in time, but the powerful force still sent him crashing against the wall. He marked the archer skeleton, knowing that tougher challenges awaited him, but he couldn't afford to back down. His plan was to deal with the archer first, so he sprinted past the other skeletons to reach it. He decapitated the archer skeleton and struck its weak point, dealing 360 damage. His weapon's special effect added an additional 430 damage. He gained 300 XP and increased his hunt value by 1 point. Additionally, a notification informed him that his Baldur's Curse sword had absorbed the skeleton archer's soul. His soul power was now 1 out of 20, and each stack of soul power granted the user an additional 1% power, along with 2% Death Spirit's magic resistance. He acknowledged that his sword's special effect dealt more damage than a regular weak point attack. However, his low level meant his overall damage was not high. He decided to level up quickly and marked the spearman skeleton's head. He leapt towards it, launching an attack with a smile. Moments later, he had vanquished the skeletons and realized that once he understood their attack patterns, they were easy to defeat. However, the pile of skeleton bones began to move again. He turned around instinctively, sensing something was amiss, and saw skeletons hiding on the side attempting to resurrect the defeated skeletons. Leaping towards them, he took them by surprise and attacked. Within a minute, the skeletons were pinned to the wall. He realized these skeletons were magicians who summoned skeleton soldiers. He ordered them to quickly summon more skeleton soldiers for him to grind levels. Grinning eerily, he asked them if they had heard his command. Afterward, he hurled the skull of a skeleton towards its companions, amassing a significant amount of experience points as he persistently overcame the skeletal warriors. A notification revealed his advancement to level 20, his mark skill had leveled up. His ability to identify weak points had increased by 10%, and he was now able to mark 2 targets simultaneously. Inspecting his status window, he speculated that, with the enhancements of the demon race attribute and the unique attribute changes of a demon hunter, his foundational attributes had already surpassed those of an average level 30 player. Thus, he was confident that he could match Zhang in combat. To his surprise, the skeletal mages took their own lives in desperation. The fact that skeletons were capable of suicide astounded him. He sighed, realizing he could no longer grind for experience, and proceeded towards another gate, ready to advance to the next floor. Pushing the gate open, he was met by bones strewn across the floor. He discovered the remains of Ka Shando on the ground. Suddenly, the torches flared to life, and he was taken aback to recognize his location. Floor 2, the Death Plaza. Before him stood armored knights of levels 37 and 38, as well as a skeleton lord of unknown level. The gate behind him slammed shut, causing him to tremble in fear. Wasn't the final boss supposed to be on floor 3? Frustrated, he realized the system hadn't merely altered the underground dungeon monsters, it had also changed the map's inhabitants. He understood it was no longer the dungeon he had designed. One of the knights lifted its sword to strike him. He parried the blow, but was forced to deflect the sword, knowing he couldn't withstand the assault for long. He drew his sword and slashed at the knight, only to find that the armored figure remained unscathed. This unexpected invulnerability to damage shocked him. He triggered his hunt mark, but a notification warned him the target had no weak points. This realization, that his foe had no vulnerabilities, left him astounded. He then noted the knights were clad in the elf tribe's netherweave armor. When one of the knights lunged at him, he attempted to fend off the assault with his sword. He quickly recognized the attack's overwhelming strength, realizing it was leagues beyond the skeletons he had just vanquished. Unable to repel the strike, he was hurled back, the impact to his abdomen making him cough up blood. Looking at the skeletal enemies, he mused on the fate of the drunkard's son who had met his end there. The knight advanced towards him, halting just in front of him. He considered the likelihood of meeting his demise in this very dungeon. As he contemplated the inherent risks and dangers a player faced in dungeons, essentially staking their life, the knight launched a relentless attack. Collapsed on the ground, he felt his heart cease to beat. He was so fatigued he couldn't summon the strength to stand, leaving him to wonder if this was the end. He envisioned Ma and Meng Meng, offering them a silent apology. A notification alerted him to his heart's failure and the consequent activation of his demon's secondary heart. Thus, the demon heart activates. He was lying on the ground, and the knights were looking at him. One of the knights raised his sword to deliver a fatal blow, but he opened his eyes and immediately stood up before the sword could strike him. He punched the knight in the stomach, taunting them for their sluggishness. The knight tumbled into the others, shattering parts of their faces. The interface informed him that when the demon heart beats, the player receives a 50% bonus to all attributes. Simultaneously, the player will not feel fear. His strength increased to 72, agility to 53, physique to 21, wisdom to 19, and sense to 20. He felt lighter, stronger, and confident that the demon heart's buff would allow him to combat the berserker knights. One of the knights lunged to attack him, but he leaped in time to evade, then slammed the knight's face into the ground. He was puzzled when the knight didn't move. Grabbing its head confirmed its elimination, leading him to question why he hadn't gained any experience points. He then realized the armored knights had no vulnerabilities, and Baldur's Curse sword wasn't effective against them because they weren't death spirits but the boss's puppets. Opening his inventory, he understood that upon stepping inside, he was already engaged with the boss. He drew his vibro-metal longsword, lunged at the knight, and cleaved it in half. Looking at the fallen knights, he felt fearless, confident that his current self could easily dispatch a bunch of skeletons. He decapitated one skeleton, pierced another's chest, and shattered the remnants with a powerful stomp. A few minutes later, he finally defeated the knight's skeletons and confronted the skeleton boss. He looked up at the boss and was taken aback to find it standing, its gaze upon him. The pressure was palpable. It unsheathed its sword and swung it through the air towards him. Although the strike didn't hit him, he understood the vast power gap between him and the skeleton boss. Stunned, he wondered if this was still a C-rank dungeon. He knew the boss had deliberately skewed its attack. If it had aimed accurately, he would be dead. Even with the demon heart and undead bell, his instincts cautioned him against combating this skeletal boss. The boss questioned if he was still human. The inquiry shocked him back to reality. He remembered the goddess's curse, and after defeating Zhang, he could gain experience. He replied affirmatively, he was no longer human. The boss announced that if he wasn't human, it wouldn't need to kill him. Surprised, he mainly wondered about the boss's intentions. The boss told him it could sense a familiar presence on him and instructed him to open his inventory. As he released various items from his inventory, he questioned if any were what the boss referred to. He showed the boss a risque magazine, which the boss seemed to appreciate momentarily before maintaining composure. It repeated its earlier statement that it sensed something from his body. He revealed a necklace, asking if that was what it meant. The boss was taken aback, exclaiming that after 100 years, it had finally found it. The item's name was Skyline Tree's Key, a legendary level artifact. It was a sacred object the elf tribe had been protecting for many generations. Utilizing the key would allow one to control the Skyline Tree, activate an absolute barrier, enable the tree to blossom and bear fruit. Upon maturation, the fruits would explode upon contact with the ground, causing extensive damage. He was taken aback by the SSS rank item. He thought there was a major bug because an underground dungeon dropped a legendary item. He questioned if he should risk his life to reclaim it, but knew he couldn't defeat that monster. Suddenly, an interface appeared, congratulating him for activating the main mission, Elf Prince Osith's request. The Skyline Tree was under siege by malevolent energy, facing an unprecedented crisis. It beseeched him to deliver the Skyline Tree key to Elf King Nuo, enabling him to prevent the impending disaster. He questioned if the skeletal boss was the Elf Prince and considered it a plausible explanation for the knight's elf armor. For now, though, his priority was reclaiming the key. Accepting the request, he planned to contemplate further actions later. In Skyline City, at the Royal Palace on Harvest Day, a sacred day for the elf tribe was unfolding. The elf prince, Osith, was reveling with others, unaware that within the royal relic chambers, an intruder was inspecting their treasures. This intruder had stolen the key to the Skyline Tree. With the loss of the key, the protective barrier of the Skyline Tree vanished, initiating a war between the Dark Elves and the Forest Elves. The elves blamed Osith's negligence for this disaster, so they stripped him of his title and banished him from the Skyline Tree. Osith, now ousted, embarked on a journey to retrieve the Skyline Tree's key. Unfortunately, he fell into an ambush within the Mist Forest, a fatal encounter for everyone involved. Osith's soul was then controlled by an evil entity. When he opened his eyes, he found himself transformed into the Lord of the Burial Dungeon, a prisoner in his own realm. 20 years prior, a human arrived. Osith did not wish to kill him, yet the malevolent energy inside forced his hand. Wu, realizing why Osith had previously questioned him about his humanity, was puzzled by the existence of this evil energy, as he had not incorporated such a concept into his game design. Wu informed Osith of his mission to save someone and asked for Lasso's tears. Osith revealed that he did indeed possess a bottle of the tears once, but due to his prolonged captivity and boredom, he had consumed it. Frustrated by this news, Wu realized he stood no chance against Osith but proposed the idea of making a soup from him. Osith, presenting a ring, calmed Wu and explained that Lasso's tears were not the only means of saving someone. He went on to share that Lasso's tears could have side effects, and the ring, named the Root Ring, might prove more helpful. The Root Ring, crafted from the roots of the Skyline Tree by the Forest Elves, imbued its wearer with immunity from all diseases. Upon hearing this, Wu was taken aback, while Osith simply remarked that the ring was quite valuable. Overwhelmed with joy, Wu told Osith that the ring was not only valuable but superior to Lasso's tears. Osith agreed to give Wu the ring, but in exchange, he asked Wu to perform a task. He wanted Wu to use the undead bell to free the souls trapped with him in the burial dungeon, victims of the same fate because of their loyalty to Osith. Wu cautioned Osith that using the undead bell could make the spirits disappear forever. Osith, however, simply smiled and accepted the potential outcome, acknowledging that they had already experienced death once. Wu was torn. The bell was a valuable artifact, and using it here seemed wasteful. However, not using it meant he could not acquire the ring to save Meng Meng. Wu activated the ring, and it emitted a brilliant light that enveloped the spirits. As the light faded, so did the spirits, with one bidding farewell to his prince. Osset bid goodbye to his brother Dean, and the souls who had remained loyal to Osset found their release from the burial dungeon. Wu queried Osset about his continued existence despite being a spirit, to which Osset responded that his strength prevented the undead Bell from eliminating him. Wu pondered the implications, realizing that if Osset didn't die, he wouldn't be able to exit the dungeon. However, Osset simply stated he could open a transport gate, and with a flick of his fingers, he did just that. Osset handed Wu a letter to be given to his father if they were ever to cross paths. Wu stepped onto the transport gate, slowly fading from view, leaving Osset alone. Once alone, Osset revealed a book he had been hiding and started flipping excitedly through the pages of a risque magazine, lamenting that he couldn't go out to see the world's beautiful women who seemed more attractive than the palace's elf girls. Then, Osset remembered he had forgotten to tell Wu one crucial detail: the transport gate was randomized, and even he didn't know where Wu would end up. After the goddess martial artist went missing, dark elves breached the first line of war and launched an attack on the humans. It was the most ferocious assault in all of history. A huge eagle attacked a man who shouted desperately for his captain to save him. Fortunately, the captain arrived in time and repelled the eagle with a swift elbow, causing it to slam hard onto the ground. Despite his fear, the captain, Lai Zhangyun from the 2nd Offensive Team of the Goddess Martial Artist Guild, stood firm to protect his comrade. He extended his hand to the man, Zhang Hao, asking if he was alright. Accepting Lai's hand, Hao informed him of the deaths of Lu Xing and Zhang Zi. He expressed his despair, believing there was no point in fighting a war where their enemies hid in the shadows, controlling monsters as their pawns. Hao concluded they stood no chance of winning. In response, Lai emphasized their duty to defend humanity's first line of defense until their leader returned. Hao, with tears in his eyes, reminded Lai that their leader had already been missing for over a month, and his fear was mounting. He expressed his belief that they would all perish if their leader did not return. Suddenly, a solitary red petal drifted down, followed by a shower of similar petals. Lai, puzzled by this phenomenon, looked upwards to see they originated from the skyline tree. When one of the dark elves sounded a trumpet, their forces began to retreat, leaving the human soldiers bewildered. An excited Hao informed Lai that the elves were retreating and they had survived. Yet, Lai could not understand why the elves would withdraw when they were clearly at an advantage. The tree's flowers bore fruit, which started to crack and fall to the ground. One of these fruits rolled toward Hao, who curiously picked it up. Recognizing the danger, Lai warned Hao to drop it, but not before it began to glow red. Just in time, Hao threw it away before it detonated, creating a large crater. Witnessing this, Hao was stunned. Panic set in as the remaining fruits also began to explode, leading Hao to scream in anger and confusion, blaming the elves. Meanwhile, in the deceased country, a transport gate materialized and Wu cautiously emerged. Surprised by his surroundings, he observed mist and enormous tree roots, as well as large structures hanging from the roots. Struck by this sight, he pondered if he was at the deepest floor of the skyline tree or if this was the elf tribe's resting place. Then, it hit him, he was in the highest difficulty dungeon. Wu was in the deceased country, a dungeon of a rank difficulty with a party capacity of 20. He cursed the skeleton, Osset, for sending him to such a place. He focused on the hanging structure and, to his surprise, something began to break free from it. As the entity fell from its enclosure, Wu found himself staring at a level 51 Death Elf warrior. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 3 in the comments section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.